We're all a year older, but Africa's still got the youngest population in the world. Over 70% of its people are under 30, and the continent's future is a reflection of global prospects, as by 2050, 1 in 4 people on the planet are expected to be African. Now, Africa's human capital is a humongous resource, but it will take work to make the most of that potential. On these first days of a new year's, we'll be looking into 2024 and beyond with the African Union's youngest diplomat, the organization's special envoy on youth affairs in Africa, Chido Cleopatra Mpemba. Chido, Your Excellency, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us right in the freshest day of 2024. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you too.
So it's great having you on the show. But first of all, give us a bit of a big picture view of your take on what youth empowerment will mean for Africa in 2024.
Okay, I think because we have so many elections that are coming up, over 10 countries in Africa having elections, from South Africa to Rwanda to Namibia to Ghana. So it's quite clear that when it comes to empowerment for young people in Africa, it has to do with political empowerment. How can we empower our young people within the continent to also run for different political positions that will also help in shaping the Africa that we want and their countries? How can we also make sure that young people actually go to the polls to vote? Because we've seen that previously a lot of young people have not been voting. And I think it's very important that when we talk about empowerment, given that it's such a big year on elections, we have more young people going to vote, but we also have more young people taking up political positions as well of leadership.
And when we were speaking earlier, you were saying that one of the things that you think is a really big issue when it comes to forward-looking African young African youth is security. Is there any shift in the way that African youth expect to see that managed on the continent?
Definitely. I think we've also seen that there's been a rise of coups, and a lot of young people actually responsible for those coups. It also shows that a lot of young people are taking matters into their own hands. So that's been a shift that we've seen, but I think it's also important that we look at how we address such issues collectively, intergenerationally as well. And we need to see that rise in a shift of peace and security to have young people also on the table. And again, it goes back to political leadership. It goes back to democracy and making sure that they're also collectively involved in the decisions that are made at national level. So we need to look at how that shift is going to come. It can come in a negative way if, young people are not fully involved. But I think it's very important that we find ways to tackle, these issues and not, continue in a cycle of unconstitutional changes of governance, due to lack of involvement of young people in political spaces.
And so we're talking there about the importance of incorporating more young voices in the way that Africa's political landscape is shaped. But, in the intro into our conversation, we were talking a little bit there about how Africa's population is expected to take up a substantial amount of the global population by 2050. How do you think this is going to affect the relationship of the continent with other regions going forward?
We've seen a rise in development, and as much as, of course, looking in the past when it comes to economic empowerment of the future of Africa, there's been issues of high unemployment, issues of social development, but we're seeing that shift in innovation that's coming from young people. We're also seeing a shift with regards to young people creating employment for themselves and taking matters in their own hands in that regard. So it's very important that even when you look at the global landscape in terms of decisions that are made, including even on stuff to do with climate change, that, we also have Africa on the forefront, and taking decisions collectively is very important. If I take it back to climate change, for instance, just last year with the first ever Africa Climate Summit, where, Africa is coming together to make those collective decisions and that bargaining of power. So again, we're seeing that shift because we're coming together collectively and making sure that whatever decisions are made in a global landscape, it's also important that collectively as Africa, we're also involved and we also get to negotiate what can affect us, what's already affecting us now and what will affect us in the future too.
Now, you've also recently been appointed as the co-chair of the WHO, the World Health Organization's Commission on Social Connection. What does that mean within an African context?
Okay, so we've seen a rise, especially with COVID-19, there's been a rise of social isolation and loneliness that came as a result of COVID-19. We've also seen that rise with young people where, when it comes to social isolation, it knows no age at this moment of time. So, because of that, again, it also affects mental health. And, mental health in Africa is already stigmatized. A lot of young people are committing suicide. A lot of young people are not able to speak out with the challenges that they're faced with, again, which goes back to issues to do with, empowerment as well. And given that, I think it's a very important decision that the World Health Organization has made, in terms of, social isolation being an emerging public health issue globally. But not only that, also, giving me the honor to be a commissioner and to also co-chair alongside other world leaders to see how we can tackle this issue, but making sure that even Africa, is not left behind with that. I mean, often there's so many challenges that we're faced with globally, but specifically for Africa, we've seen a lot of that politically, we've seen a lot of that economically, and because of that, issues to do with mental health are often sidelines. And at the same time, these are issues that young people are genuinely being faced with that we also need to,
Chido?
tackle as a matter of urgency.
Chido Cleopatra Mpemba, thank you so much for seeing us into this new year with your insight into some of the hopes for the continent's youth.